All right, welcome everybody to this afternoon's session. I'm delighted to introduce Ben Motz, a research scientist at Indiana University, and Josh Owens, the CEO of Boost app. We're going to be presenting today on the Boost application. I've hit the record button, so I wanted everybody to be aware that I'm recording. And I also want to draw your attention to the live transcript button at the bottom on Zoom. If you prefer to have live captioning on, that feature is available. And with that, I'll hand it over to Josh or Ben, who's starting.
I'll take it away. Thank you so much, Etienne. It is really my greatest privilege to have you be the session host. And thank you all for joining. I've missed the Unizin community. Just being in the past couple sessions, I'm reminded of how delightful this community that we've all put together happens to be. So thank you so much for coming to this one. I'm going to have a hard time monitoring the chat. So Josh, would you be comfortable interrupting me if somebody asks a question? I'm sure that both Josh and I are comfortable fielding questions during the talk. If you want to hang on to them until the very end, then that's fine too. I'll leave some time for that as well. My name is Ben Motz. I'm a research scientist at Indiana University with my faculty appointment in the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences. And I also serve as the director of IU's relatively recently formed e-learning research and practice lab. But most germane to this session, I also have the privilege of being called the Chief Research Officer of Boost App Inc. This is actually the first time I've ever had to give a conflict of interest declaration. So let me just say, I am kind of employed by Boost App Inc. And yeah, I'm also excited to be joined by Josh Owens, who's the CEO, my boss of Boost App Inc. You want to say hi, Josh, and just say a couple things about yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. It's great to be here and presenting to the community. I've gotten to know it really well here over the last few months. We started Boost a few months ago as we took the technology out of the research that had been done at Indiana University and into a fully functioning business that can bring this to campuses across the United States. My background is in teaching and education. I've helped lead a number of technology companies and additionally was on the faculty at both Butler University and IU for about 5 years, teaching economics and statistics.
And Josh is an all-around amazing marvel of a human. So yeah, I could not be more delighted that he's here with us today to talk about Boost. So I'm going to kind of gently walk you through the process that gave rise to this application and also some of the research that we've done on its benefits for student learning and success. The app itself now exists outside of Indiana University. So despite the branding that you see for IU and UITS on the bottom, the app exists entirely independent of Indiana University at this particular moment. So without further ado, let me say that the way that I got involved in this was I had spent previous to being involved in Boost about 10 years as a teaching faculty member at Indiana University. And one of the things that I noticed about myself as a teaching faculty member was that, like every other teacher at IU, I only had exposure to what was going on in my class. That is to say, my experience of the student experience was myopic. It was limited to only those students for whom I was making assignments. And I didn't really have, I don't know, any sort of insight into what other teachers were doing with my same students, except when they would complain about being stressed around midterms or finals. One of the things that was eye-opening for me when I got more involved in our IT division in UITS was that students actually have dramatically more to keep track of than what any individual instructor might be privileged to know about. So we only as teachers have insights into what's going on in our class. Students get exposure to what's going on across many classes. And what students have to keep track of is more than I think any individual faculty member could be aware of, because they would only know what they're asking their students to do. This is something that I noticed and we started digging into in the data that was available, for example, through Unizin and also I use other data warehouses. And what we started to discover was that students had really a lot to keep track of, and that whether a student was keeping track of the things that they were supposed to keep track of, particularly in Canvas, that was dramatically predictive of how they would perform in their courses. So we have many different measures of success at a place like Indiana University, as I'm sure is at the places where you guys happen to be. And we discovered pretty early on that missing an assignment is the #1 predictor of many of these outcomes. So it's easily the #1 predictor of risk in attendance and participation and engagement flags that are levied by instructors in IU's own flagging system. In fact, we found that about 50% of all of the flags that instructors would levy about their students proactively were because students were completing only some or no assignments. If you were to go anywhere and make a predictive model of whether a student's going to pass a class, whether a student's going to get an A, whether a student's going to get anything higher than a C+, a predictive model of D's, F's, and W's, whatever, I'm willing to bet that you would also find that missing assignments is the #1 predictor of negative outcomes. And it makes sense, right? An assignment is the substance of what a grade is made out of. And if you're not turning in assignments, you're not getting points toward that grade. This is remarkable when you consider the volume of assignments that students have to do. Prior to the pandemic, we observed that students had about 76 assignments due per semester, and those are only graded assignments with deadlines that are worth some graded credit toward their course. So that comes out to more than 1 per day. That includes graduate students. If you look at different segments of the population, it's a lot more. For example, if you look at freshmen, it could be double that. And that was pre-pandemic. We saw since COVID-19 a 20% increase in online assignments. It's even higher in intro and science courses. So really, students are doing way more work than I think any of us might individually be aware of. This is something that I think is not just recent to COVID. This is actually a kind of a long march in this direction for at least the last 10 years. What I've got shown here is a Chronicle article from Prof Hacker. This is Derek Bruff. And Derek Bruff described how it was really important for active learning and for pedagogy for people to be giving students more assignments rather than just having to be passively receiving instruction in their courses. And this is something that's supported by psychology. There's a lot of psychology research that suggests that improving learning could be facilitated by having students practice retrieval or by spacing their study, by gaining more feedback. This has resulted in pedagogical arguments, like I said, with Derek Bruff, suggesting that active learning is better than passive learning, and thus we need to give students more assignments. That also provides more transparency on what the learning outcomes are. And by having more assignments, each individual assignment might be less stress. So yeah, you could actually spread out the points in the course so that there isn't such high stress assignments early. Yeah, we've got more formative assessment happening throughout. And also students prefer this. So students prefer having grades distributed over a larger number of assignments. So for all these reasons, we're now in a state where the ecosystem of an individual course is rich with assignments, but multiplied across all the different course enrollments that a student might have, it's a lot to keep track of. And students are not always keeping track of it. And in those situations where students are missing assignments, it's really, really bad for downstream outcomes. So we made Boost. Boost is a mobile app that empowers students to keep up with their day, and it has a pretty expansive feature set that includes proactive reminders when there's a due date approaching for an assignment that somebody hasn't submitted something to. It also provides positive feedback when students have made a submission on time for their assignments. And there's other features as well, like announcement notifications when an instructor posts an announcement. There's a daily digest if you just want to see a snapshot of everything that's due in the day. It integrates with the Canvas calendar, so you get notifications about events. And there's also a fully feature-rich to-do list that integrates with the Canvas to-do list so that a student can make their own nudges for themselves. The way that a student uses Boost is that they would download the app from the App Store for free. So they would just download the app, and then when opening the app, they would log into Canvas. That would do an OAuth 2 exchange, and it would make it so that Boost could operate on the student's behalf, collecting what the assignments are in the student's enrollments, and then, providing notifications pretty automagically. So there's little involved from the student's perspective other than downloading and then authenticating, and then Boost operates in the background, helping students stay on top of the work that they would otherwise need to do. What I'm going to talk about today are those first two items listed in the feature set, so due date reminders and the submissions positive feedback. These are things that we've done extensive research on, and I'm kind of excited to share with you details about how it supports students at Indiana University. Okay, so those two, let's start with the first. So this is our research on assignment reminder boosts. We really had two questions when we built Boost in the first place. And the first was, do automated notifications about upcoming deadlines simply have efficacy? That is to say, do they improve adherence to assignment submissions? And then second, is that something that would actually be utilized by the students who need it? So could we actually see improvements in the student group that would download Boost where they weren't already submitting their assignments and they submit more assignments on account of having used Boost? So to do this, we really needed to do an experimental research design. So when we first developed Boost, we actually inserted into the Boost architecture some of the necessary components that would be required for running experimental research studies. We got, for this very first pilot, this is back in fall of 2018, we got 5 courses to participate in this very alpha of alpha pilots with a full sample enrollment of about 1,000 students, and 133 were game to try this wild new app that we had put together. But this was relatively common of the sort of sample that we could describe at any university level. So this spanned multiple campuses. We had representation, from many different types of students, because these introductory psychology courses were germane to many other programs and high enrollment courses. Okay, so what we did with these students was we did a within subject controlled experiment where for the first 6 weeks of a semester, they would get assignment reminders in Boost about upcoming assignments that didn't have submissions. And if you weren't assigned to that group, then you would get announcement notifications in Boost. So it would send a notification not when you had an assignment due, but instead it would send a notification when the instructor would post an announcement to the course. After 6 weeks, then we switched condition assignments so that those students who had only been receiving notifications about the instructor announcements would now receive the due date reminders and vice versa. If you had previously gotten the due date reminders, then you got instructor announcements, so that we could look for any individual student, whether exposure to the Boost assignment reminders would improve compliance with those course assignments. Just to give you an idea of what the dosage of these things are, within the 6 weeks when somebody would have been in the Boost assignment reminder condition, they would get about 4.7 reminders. So students don't submit things well in advance of assignment deadlines. And sometimes students got close enough to the deadline without having submitted that there would have been a trigger of an announcement. I'm sorry, would have been a trigger of a notification. But it turns out that that was about the same cadence with which an instructor would post announcements. So in 6-week period, there was about 5 instructor announcements. So number of notifications that students received in each of these conditions is roughly equal. So our big question is whether students submitted assignments more when they got the pink, the pink treatment of Boost assignment reminders. And it turns out they did. So what you're seeing here on the far left is my fancy Bayesian way of doing results of experiment analyses. So those blue lines are what you'd imagine to be credible descriptions of the mean tendency for each of the courses and then for the full sample. And what we've found is that assignment submission rates increased by 3.7% over the time when students were receiving notifications about announcements. So that is to say that there was a roughly 4% improvement in assignment submission rates due to getting these due date reminders in Boost. We also saw evidence of increasing numbers of page views for those assignments. Also, we saw improvements in percent score of those assignments. So one of the coolest things also is that we saw participants getting higher ratings. Whenever somebody gets a notification in Boost, there's an opportunity for them to give a star rating. We saw participants give higher ratings to those notifications that were about upcoming deadlines than even those instructor announcements for their courses, which is insightful because instructors know more about what students need to do in their courses than Boost might, because instructors are the creators of the course. Even so, participants enjoyed the automated reminders. We did another study. After having been encouraged by these results, we decided to roll it out to the Indiana University community. The way that we did that was we made it so that any instructor at any campus could sign up to have Boost available in their courses. From those courses, we plugged them into Boost so that if a student downloaded the app, they would then only see those courses where an instructor had explicitly raised their hand and volunteered. What this meant was that the students who were using Boost had some courses where Boost was active, and they also had some courses where Boost wasn't active. So within each individual student, we were able to make a comparison between their behaviors in the courses where Boost was active versus those courses where the Boost was not active. And you can see that obviously there's going to be way more courses where it's not active because we had instructors actually have to volunteer or answer the call to participate. So yeah, in this particular case, we're doing a quasi-experimental contrast. We haven't randomly assigned it, but nevertheless, we're doing it within each individual student to make within-student comparisons. Compared with courses where Boost was not enabled, students in Boost had 6% more assignment submissions and also 4% higher course grades. That 4% is awfully similar to the improvement that we saw in percent score from the previous study that was much more of an experimental control. So yeah, we're impressed with the scale of positive effects here, where it seems like, yes, even at scale when we've got hundreds of courses, that when you're getting assignment reminders about upcoming deadlines when you haven't submitted something, students are much more likely to submit and also get higher scores, thus both on those assignments and on the course. I saw there was a question. Is it something I should pause for?
And I might just interrupt you real quick to make sure that we can clarify this. Jane was asking, were the announcement reminders about the assignment or about course content? And just to confirm about the assignments themselves. Anything else?
It's a great question. It was about both. We didn't control what the instructors would post in their announcements. And yeah, we actually did a very detailed analysis of what the contents of instructors' announcements are so that we could know what we're comparing against. And it turned out it was hard to classify an announcement as being only about the course or only about an assignment. So there was evidence of both in most of the assignments, but these were as natural and as unintrusive as possible. Instructors knew that we would be analyzing those announcements. So all of this was very above the table. And yeah, it was both. So, I mean, another way to say that is there was much more information in instructor announcement than what Boost could possibly offer. Erwin asked, does Boost require additional work from the instructor? And the answer is no. In fact, nowadays, instructors can do nothing to enable or disable Boost. It's something that's entirely in the student's hands. So yeah, nowadays, instructor might not even have any sort of control over whether a student is using Boost or not. That's at Indiana University. Another thing to say briefly about this spring 2019 quasi-experimental pilot is that we were able to do an analysis to find out where the improvement was. So what you see in that funny dot plot that has also kind of like a curved regression line, we found that in the area where the graph is kind of yellowish, that's where the significant improvement was. And that was among students who had average course grades that was basically between like 40% and 80%. So you don't see huge improvements from Boost among those students who are already going to get an A. The improvement is really isolated only to those students who would have otherwise been perhaps on the border on the average of about a C or a D in the course, and boosts them up. Okay, so to summarize with respect to assignment reminders, it's pretty clear from 2 semesters of research and both totally rigorous within subject randomized control trial and then a quasi-experimental at scale analysis that automated reminders highlighting imminent targets when students need to complete their coursework are more effective, even than instructors' own periodic announcements about what students should be doing in their course. I think that one of the cool things about Boost is that it's a smartphone app, so it's in students' pockets, and it can be a very just-in-time automated way of getting the attention of students when they need to do something. So, you know, unlike sending notifications via email, yeah, Boost is able to grab a student where they happen to be and help them to succeed in those rare situations where they're getting close to potentially being in trouble. That's as it relates to assignment reminders. Let me also give you a little bit of a description of what's going on with respect to positive feedback. So if you were in the session about what's going on with Canvas recently, yeah, I don't know, I'm curious how many of you guys were in. There was like 110 people. Those Canvas folks, they're popular. They described their Canvas Confetti, which came out since the time that we built this particular analysis in Boost. And one of the interesting things about Canvas Confetti is that it's, yeah, it fills a gap that otherwise might be there. When a student does their work in Canvas, they would click submit, and it would be as if they were submitting into a dark void, into a black hole, because prior to the Confetti, nothing would happen. It would just be the case that your hard work gets stuck into a shoebox and you're not sure what happened. So it's good that there's Confetti. Not all institutions have turned it on, but Boost really aggressively fills this gap by giving automated feedback as soon as it detects that a student has made an on-time submission to a graded assignment. And when we did this, we wanted to do it in a way that was not just to test the efficacy of doing this, but also to test what kind of messaging would be most effective. So we did an interesting analysis between praise messages and value affirming statements. Praise could be considered to be just like a positive assessment of what somebody just did. So something like great job or high five or nice work. A value statement is something that instead of just giving your attention to the fact that you did something, instead highlights the value of the thing that you did towards some goal. And curiously, there isn't a clear understanding from psychology or from learning sciences about one being better than the other. Certainly, there's a lot of value-based interventions out there in the world right now, but we weren't 100% clear that getting a value-affirming smartphone notification from an automated tool would have the same efficacy than those much more complex and detailed value interventions that people are currently exploring in the psychology literature. So it might be the case that simple praise works better. This was an analysis that we were curious to try out in Boost. So in spring 2019, in addition to having a group that got no feedback whatsoever, a no feedback control, we randomly assigned students to get praise feedback whenever they would submit their work on time, or value feedback whenever they would submit their work on time. And there was a little bit of randomness here. So it wasn't the case that we wanted students to get feedback every time they submitted. Some students have like 10 assignments due in a particular day, and we thought that maybe that would cause feedback to become diluted. So we throttled it so that students would only get feedback once a week, a maximum of once a week from a particular course. Example messages for the praise feedback is just an exclamation like outstanding or way to go. And the value feedback would say things like, you just got a little closer to a graduation party, or hard work and success in college go hand in hand, where we're trying to really highlight that what you just did is something that got you closer toward degree conferral. And we wrote the value feedback messages in consultation with some researchers who do social intervention research in college. And yeah, we felt like these were all at least normative to what we would expect the literature on value feedback to suggest would be effective. So the big question is what we found. Again, I've got some funny charts here with dots. On the top, you see every individual dot is a student, and the height of the dot is their assignment submission rate. And on the bottom, every individual dot is still a student, and the height of the dot is the average percent score in their course as estimated within Canvas. And the interesting thing that you can kind of even visually see, like if you squint your eyes a little bit, you can see that the praise condition, the middle column, that it's darker at the top than the control condition, which got no assignment feedback, or the value condition, which got the value-based interventions. So there was an increase in the concentration of high submission rates when students got praise feedback compared with value and compared with no feedback at all. In fact, there was no difference between value affirming feedback and no feedback whatsoever. And we also saw that both in submission rates and in the average percent score in Canvas, where, again, if you squint your eyes, you can kind of see that there's a higher density of dots in that space above about 60%. And that's an interesting threshold on its own. So 60% is like the threshold between passing and not passing the class in a lot of situations. So what we can infer is that there was about a 5% increase in the number of students with submission rates above 77%. And that equated to a 3% increase in the number of students with course scores greater than 60%, kind of like passing the class. I should just stop for a moment and let that sink in. That's a BFD. So just by getting smartphone notifications, when you'd sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes submit work on Canvas, we saw a 3% increase in the pass rate. I was totally surprised, and I've done lots of research on this in many different ways, and I would put my profession behind it. This is real. And it might seem like a magic wand, but it's the closest thing that I've ever seen to a magic wand in the learning analytics literature, where literally, here's an intervention, no work on the instructor's behalf whatsoever, and it increases the percent of students who are passing a course by 3%. That's pretty important, not just from the perspective of like student success, but also from a financial perspective, and also from a belonging in college sort of perspective as well. There was a question, did Boost significantly reduce withdrawals from the courses? So it's funny, when a student withdrew from a course where Boost was active, we kept them in the study because, oh, I'm sorry, this was a direct message to me. So, yeah, I'll come back to this question later if it's something that you want me to explore later during the Q&A. So to summarize, praise, even while scripted and automated, it still improved student behavior better than efforts to emphasize the broader value of an action. So we've got a theoretical nugget here that we can take to town. And also above and beyond the benefits of assignment reminders that I started the talk with, it really seems like social interventions also move the needle with respect to student performance and also student success. And this is really the direction that I think that Boost is aiming toward developing in. So yeah, in the not too distant future, we'll see building efforts at more tools and functions within Boost. And I think that focusing on that social element within Boost is where the strategic vision currently lies. That's a strategic vision that I'm going to be excited to let Josh chart out. So this is something that I'm going to be the research scientist for. And yeah, we'll explore how we can help improve student performance through a smartphone app together. Thank you so much for your time. If you're interested in more details, boost.education is our website. And at this point, I think I should take some questions. Do you have anything to add, Josh, before we jump to questions?
No, this is absolutely fantastic. And it's really fantastic to be able to share the research both launched Boost, but also why we are so excited to get this in the hands of as many students as possible. We've got questions pouring in. So Ben, why don't we just start with a few of these and we'll tackle them as they come in. The first was from Courtney. Do you think the novelty positive impact of the messaging will wear off? For example, email notifications get ignored over time. Can you give a little context of what you've seen there?
Yeah, no, that was actually something we looked at. So as I mentioned before, whenever anybody gets a notification, there's a star rating, and we saw no change over time in terms of students' marks on the star rating. I do think that this was partly because we were throttling. So I do think that if we overwhelm students with notifications so that every time they submitted something, they would get this boost, then it might be something that would become just a background din. So I do think that in some ways, these interventions need to be throttled so that we don't lose novelty. That's an excellent question, though. We didn't see evidence of that in the data that we've observed.
Erwin is asking if Boost is sensitive to different kinds of assignments, asking about multi-part assignments, things like that.
That's an excellent question. There is a pretty rigorous list of criteria that makes an assignment eligible to receive a deadline reminder boost. Any assignment, regardless of these criteria, can be included in the daily digest. But yeah, we only send deadline reminder boosts to those assignments that were pretty clear that student needs to behave immediately on. So there are some things that are not within that category. So for example, if the assignment is in an LTI tool where that LTI tool is outside of Canvas and it's not automatically graded within Canvas, Boost actually might not know whether a student has or hasn't submitted. So if there's a third-party tool that isn't LTI integrated with LTI 1.3, then it's something that that would be blind to us. Another thing is group assignments. So we're not able to send deadline reminders about group assignments because we don't know if that student is on point to be the submitter. And we wouldn't want to trouble an entire group with something that only one student should need to go for. So there is a list of criteria for what makes an assignment boostable in this context.
I think one of the things that's interesting to add here is we've been sensitive because we don't want to overrun students with notifications, exactly to the point that's been brought up here, because we've got such a tool that has been so effective. We want to make sure that we protect that and continue to bring those results to bear. Additionally, though, Ben had mentioned at the very beginning, and I would just remind everyone, there is an added planner functionality to it. So effectively, you can add the plus button as a student and add all types of reminders. They don't even have to necessarily be class related. They could be other items, but you can assign them to a class and then effectively be reminded about them as you've added them in. So that gives the student a lot of control over multi-part assignments or group assignments, things like that. Ben, you had started to get at Aaron's question, so why don't we just hit it? Did Boost significantly reduce withdrawals from the courses? What was the effect size for the intervention that you were seeing?
Yeah, so almost all the analyses that I've described thus far are with the assignment reminder stuff was within subject analyses. So yeah, I can very confidently say that the effects that we're observing aren't because we're seeing increases in withdrawals from students based on receiving the boost. So that was also something that we were very sensitive to early on. And yeah, so it doesn't cause students to withdraw because they were receiving boosts. We didn't see massive changes in terms of a reduction in the number of withdrawals. It seems to be the case that students who would benefit from these boosts are sticking around in the course, and they wind up being the students who would just get poor grades. So that's a good question. Yeah.
Stephanie is asking, there's been some discussion about whether helicopter analytics are a good thing for students. For example, your boss won't be sending you a reminder about due dates. Do you think Boost falls into this category? Ben, can you add a little context there from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question, Stephanie. I don't know, Josh and I talk about this a lot. One of the things that I think that is really surprising to me from the perspective of, somebody who gets insight into the amount of work that students are asked to do, is that students don't have more tools like this. I would not survive 1 week, let alone 1 day, without Outlook's reminders of when I'm supposed to be where. So I don't see this as being an example of something that we should be, I don't know, that's spoon feeding to students exactly what they need to do at exactly what time. I see this as a support tool that students can turn on if they so choose. They can turn off boosts if they don't want. They can turn on boosts if they want. And it's something that we're equipping students so that they can be the best student that they can be. Not that we're just kind of from some sort of top down or overly overbearing perspective, just telling students what to do. This was actually something that was important to us when we were putting Boost together from the perspective of an IT division as well. So this was built at Indiana University, and we wanted to make sure that faculty were comfortable with what we were asking them to do. And chief among these was an observation that students should be doing this already, and it would just be hard. So students should be keeping a calendar. Students should be writing down when assignments are due. And this does them a service by automating it. And if they so choose, they can get notifications when they're missing something.
I completely agree with you, Ben. And I would simply add here on this slide, in that kind of smartphone, you see examples of boosts that are sent. And as Ben had mentioned, the fact that these are automated, there is a cadence to that students get used to, and that is something that is comforting and come to expect. And so I think in this way, it actually becomes really useful for students who are highly engaged with Boost and looking for it as a solution to be helpful for managing their day and being able to get through their coursework. Jane asks a follow-up question. Is there a cost? Can we start using it? Can any student just use it, or does it have to be set up with the university? This is probably a great opportunity for me to quickly jump in and just explain the best ways to partner with Boost and get it activated on your campus. The answer is we do work directly with the university, and we do that because we wall off the data for every single university. And so we use a Canvas set of Canvas API keys to effectively pull the API every 30 minutes, so we can get the data that we need from the LMS, and then we repurpose that and make sure that we're sending out notifications, positive feedback, and the other boosts appropriately based off of that. As a result, we work directly with universities to make sure that we can implement this, get it activated across campuses, notify faculty, students, staff, everyone who needs to be aware of it as we're going through those pieces. The last thing that I would just simply add is once it is activated on a campus, students can begin downloading it from both the Android and Apple app stores immediately, which is absolutely fantastic. The cost, finally, is as low as we can possibly make it to make sure that we can get it activated on campuses. And so we effectively work on tier systems for a larger campus system-wide. We're talking about a cost that would be just under $20,000 for an annual subscription, making it active for all students. And again, no additional cost to any students. So we want to be very thoughtful of inclusion and making sure that we're making this as available as possible. And for smaller universities, the school would be the cost would be under $10,000. I will drop into the chat my contact. You've got it here on the slide as well, but I'll put it there so that if you'd like to talk about activating this at your campus, I'm happy to do that offline, and we can work very quickly to partner with you as well. Looks like there's a note here on the session host as well. I'm just going to go on mute, make sure I can read that real quick.
No, yeah, it's a good question, Etienne. It's funny, you think like my reviewers apparently, because I got exactly that question when we submitted the first paper about Boost. So we did an analysis. Here's the results of the analysis. Yes, students can change the time when the deadline happens on an individual course basis. The default is 4 hours. So if you just install Boost and let it go in the background, then you'll get a notification 4 hours before a deadline if you haven't submitted something. But again, students could change it. Half the students that were under analysis in the spring 2019 semester didn't change it. So there was a pretty strong default mode tendency. Of those students who did make a change, it was spectacularly evenly split. So exactly half of that remaining half made it so that they would only get the notification within 1 hour of the deadline, and the other half made it to the total opposite end of the spectrum, made it so that it was 24 hours before the due date when they would get a notification if they hadn't had a submission. And again, this could be done on a course-by-course basis. So we have some interesting hypotheses. One is that a 4-hour window is about average because people are at an even distribution splitting it in both directions. And yeah, it seems to be the case that, yeah, in spite of the changes to 1 hour and to 24 hours, we're still seeing high ratings of those notifications. So it seems like this is still the right window for giving these sorts of like, there's a deadline, you've got to do something type notifications.
It looks like we've exhausted the questions so far. Anything else from the community out there that would be useful for either Ben or myself to address while we have everyone together? And maybe as we're waiting on that, Ben, anything additionally that we've talked through that you'd like to just highlight or add that would be useful?
Yeah, so let me know if there's if I can share any of the details of these research studies. I mean, I can send you papers if that's something that would be valuable to you. I can also give you a little bit of information about what's on the, I don't know, what's on the upcoming roadmap from my perspective as a researcher. When we created the to-do functionality within Boost. So really, we felt like there's an opportunity with Boost to make it a little bit like Wunderlist, but for college, where a student could create reminders for themselves tied to each individual assignment. And it would, yeah, this sort of like self-nudging was something that, yeah, really was like equipping students with the tools that would be necessary for them to achieve whatever goals they had set out for themselves. When we did that, we thought that maybe there was going to be a benefit to nudging students to self-nudge. And this is an interesting pioneering area of the behavioral science literature. So yeah, we did an experiment on that, and the results are actually still under analysis. Yeah, we haven't yet dug deep into what the actual notifications that students made for themselves were, but half the students got notifications to nudge themselves, and half of them did not. So yeah, there's interesting stuff yet upcoming about that particular aspect of the tool.
Yeah, and we've got an additional question here on deciding to start an assignment, turn it in is an important decision for a student to make. Are there other decisions you intend to support, other nudges on the horizon? And Ben started to address this a little bit. I'll just kind of add on his answer as well. If you think about where Boost sits right now, we're starting at the beginning of what really matters, getting a student through college by submitting the assignments that they need to be able to achieve what they need to do well in the course, complete the course, and stay on track for graduation. But as we all know, there are all types of other things that are happening in the college environment and the learning environment for students to keep on top of and to be tracking. You can think of tutoring, you can think of needing to raise their hand for extra help, you can think of mental health services, you can think of all the different ripple effects that start to happen within a student experience. And if you think about the core of Boost, what we're doing is sending a notification about something that needs to happen because we've been notified about it, because we've been because there's an action that needs to take place. But if you take that same theory and we start to apply it to all the other ways that a student is interacting with the college environment, well, I think you start to see a bigger horizon of where Boost can be incredibly helpful. And so those are all things that we will be thoughtfully research first on as we expand and add features. But what we want to make Boost effectively kind of almost like making navigating college much more easy, for any individual student. And the easiest way to do that is take really smart LMS data that already exists, that faculty members, instructors, administrators have already put time and effort into creating. But then if we can supplement that with really smart, intelligent, thoughtful community data from all the students who are taking courses that are on that campus, and we can add that together in a really useful way, well, I think we start to get a really rich supplemental environment that helps students navigate their educational journey. And in the big picture, that's really what we're interested in being able to accomplish with Boost. Right now, we're doing it in a very focused and narrow way, right around assignment reminders, where we know that we can drive results. And as we continue to expand and think about where we can go in the future, it's with that same theory in mind, but how can we apply that to other instances that students have engaging in the college environment and engaging in the learning environment to be as successful as they possibly can be. Ben, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I actually, like I alluded to at the very end, there's, I think, a lot more that we could do with respect to amplifying and also enabling social types of interventions. So if we have a student who would volunteer perhaps for Boost, that this thing is an important thing to do for this course by this particular date, then it's something that we should be able to iterate for the other students in that course who are also using Boost. So this type of sharing of responsibilities that, might be more implicit in the context of what successful student behavior might be, are things that I think that are going to be really impactful. There's the syllabus, and then there's also the hidden syllabus of what a student would otherwise need to be able to do well to be able to succeed in the course, and being able to make Boost something that functions around those requirements is also really important. We're getting more questions. This is great.
Get a few questions rolling in. Why don't we just real quickly, Ben, I know you put it in the chat, but Jane was asking, why do we think that Boost is better than to-do reminders in Canvas or Calendar, for example? I guess we might have kind of glossed over this, but I think our stock answer is this was built partly because we knew that students weren't taking advantage of what already existed because they needed to be in Canvas to be able to see a number of these things, whereas we knew that if they had a proactive solution, such as Boost, we might actually be able to move the needle. In fact, we were. But Ben, if you'd like to just add a few sentences of why Boost was built in the first place.
The number one response we got when we went to faculty council at Indiana University when we were trying to roll out Boost was, wait a minute, doesn't Canvas already do this? And it was eye-opening for faculty to realize that no, it doesn't. So yes, Canvas will notify students when a due date has been changed or when a grade has been assigned or when there's, I don't know, a change to the assignment description. And I would categorize these with due respect to our friends at Instructure as being CYA notifications, more about the stuff that's happening behind the scenes and not really indicating what a student needs to do at any given moment in time. So Boost really does do something that Canvas doesn't otherwise do, and that's to tell a student, to reach out and grab the student and say, hey, there's this thing, and if you don't do it right now, there's going to be some problems that you might experience. So yeah, this is something that we would have preferred not to have to build ourselves, but nevertheless, yeah, it's been a fun adventure.
And I'll add just one additional note. We've been happy to be on this journey with Canvas, with Instructure alongside us. And so we have a partnership agreement with Instructure. We have worked alongside them and been in constant contact as we've built this because we believe in the research and we believe in the results we've been able to see. We want to make sure that this is smart, that it's thoughtful, that it is something that continues to be additive without adding more work. And I think we've been able to thread that needle and do that really well. Sarah asked a quick question about additional research as we continue to do it. As you can see from the DNA of our company, research is at the heart of it, and we continue to have Ben on as our Chief Research Officer as we continue to complete research, which you'll see upcoming more in both the higher education space, but additionally as we pilot this into the K-12 space, the secondary education space as well. You'll see additional research, and we will continue to post that both on our website and through social channels as well as we do that research and get that published. And then Ben, Carmen asked, you may have already discussed this, but what about longer assignments that are completed over several weeks? How does Boost handle that, and what does that look like?
It's a good question. Yeah, so Boost can't know whether a student is supposed to do their work like 5 weeks before or the day of. It's something that Boost is not particularly, I don't know, there's not strong exposure in the data for us to be able to capitalize on those opportunities. One of the features that we saw in common among those instructors who do have longer assignments where there's perhaps like steps and processes involved is that they'll sometimes have calendar events that indicate milestones along the way. So that's part of the reason that we built support for Canvas event notifications is if an instructor wanted to create, for example, custom boosts that are germane only to the steps that a student would need to take along the way, or I don't know if there's a review session or a date by which a student should do something else, then these are things that an instructor could inject into Boost manually by creating a calendar event that wouldn't need to be tied to a particular assignment or deadline, but nevertheless would generate boosts at the time when the instructor schedules the calendar event to come due.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And one of the additional things I would just say here, we've kind of maybe mentioned it a couple different times in different ways, but just to put a fine point on it, as a former instructor myself in the classroom, someone who's built online hybrid courses, has taught in person, I know how much is thrown at faculty members and how much you have to do to not just create a class, but create a good class, an engaging class, something that's rigorous and not easily cheatable, and something that is that can last some time, but is also very in the moment for students. We're not looking to add additional work to faculty members, to instructors. And so what we've tried to do with Boost is make it as smart about utilizing what you are already putting into the LMS so that we can then take that data and very intelligently and optimized give it to students so that they can get what you're asking them to do get it done on time. And I think we have found the right solution by starting with the heart of the data, which is what you as a faculty member are putting into the LMS. And so because of that, we really rely heavily on the use of that LMS, how it is used, how Canvas is structured to make sure that we can give students the most accurate representation of what they actually have to do in any given day. And then there's a final question here. Do you see Boost evolving to support instructors in their teaching? I was starting to, I guess, address that a little bit in at least the theory of Boost, which is we don't want it to be an added thing for instructors to have to manage or interact with. We want to make sure that it is something that is supplementarily helping them and effectively think of it as like the safety net, right? If you're creating a fantastic class, what we want to do is make sure that Boost is right there alongside, giving students who need it that gentle nudge that they can do the things that need to get done. But Ben, additional things that you might be thinking about on this particular topic?
It's a super great question, and the answer is yes. It already kind of does. So yeah, we observed in just that first semester rollout where we were in spring 2019, we saw instructors realize, oh wait, maybe I should add due dates to my assignments in Canvas. They actually hadn't done that because they thought they were doing their students a service by being a little bit flexible, but that flexibility wound up actually perhaps making there be less transparency about what the expectations were and more students missing. So yeah, if you only add the deadline as kind of like text in the description, it doesn't help much. So yeah, I do think that Boost, just by being a service that will only work effectively if things are set up in such a way in the Canvas ecosystem as to be kind of proper, that does help to streamline a lot of the student experience and also makes Boost work more effectively. Yeah. Let's see, we're nearing the end, so maybe we ought to part ways so that everybody can get to where they need to go and the room could be recycled for the next session. I'll give a personal plug. I'm going to be giving a presentation next at 4 p.m. Eastern on many classes, if it's something that you're interested to stick around for. I don't know what room we'll be in, but for now, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's really a pleasure to be able to interact with you all. And if you have any questions whatsoever, there's few things that I like to talk about more than Boost. I think the same goes for Josh. So please do email us. We'd be excited to chat. Yeah. Anything to add, Josh?
No, that's exactly.
You want to take us home?
My email and contact there as well, but please feel free. You can reach out to me at jowens@boost.education. We'll make sure to loop in Ben on any research or specific questions there as well. Would be happy to have conversations with any and all of you about getting Boost activated on your campus for fall 2021. We've been so impressed by the usage that we already have. We have already over 10,000 students who are using Boost to be more successful in their classes, and we would love to make sure that your students are doing the same. So please feel free to reach out. And we'll provide all the information that's needed to follow up, add more context, and hopefully make it active on your campus here for fall 2021. Thanks for taking your time today to learn more about this tool and how we've been able to see student success just really increase as a result of it.
Thank you, Josh and Ben, for a very thought-provoking, question-provoking presentation today. And thank you everybody who attended. I will be closing the session in about 2 minutes, and that will shut it down for everybody. So if there are any last minute questions for Josh or Ben, or kudos, now is the time.
I think you did a great job, Etienne.
Agreed.
You made me think of distributed cognition. Structuring the environment to distribute cognitive processes, representational processes across representational media. Isn't that the line?
Yeah. I mean, crazier things have happened than Rafael Nunez influencing me, and yeah, Ed Hutchins and stuff. Yeah. maybe it happened. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad you guys are experiencing so much success. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
I'll see you in the next one.
Talk to you guys later.
See ya.
Bye.